Ever since I've been viewing anime, I've always strived to ask myself this question. What makes a good anime? The animation that gives you an orgasmic feeling each time you view it? Is it the characters and their deep motivations, whether they be good or bad? What about the plot and story? Is it simple or complex? Is there even a plot to begin with? And then last and possibly the most important question, the ending. Because a lot of anime are known to have all the goods, screw up the ending and be hated by the masses forever. And on the flip side, it can be pretty mediocre and have a great final 5 episodes and be heralded as the greatest thing ever. Today, I'm going to be reviewing one such anime, Fate Zero. Now before I start, let me remind you that I haven't seen Fate Stay Night, neither do I plan to. That shit is old, from 2006. Again, it is really old and stiff. It looks like what people think 2003 looked like. When 2003 anime was a big thing, it looks like that era of anime. And I haven't played the game that this is based on or read the light novels associated with it or the whole Fate series. I have seen other Fate shows though. Apocalypta, Unlimited Blade Works 2. I did started watching the movie. That's neither here or there. So I'm going to start with the story first. Now the story of Fate Zero takes place 10 years before Fate Stay Night in the Fugushi city where the Holy Grail War is beginning. The Holy Grail War is something of a battle royale where 7 different servants and their masters faced off for a device called the Holy Grail. And now, that Holy Grail has the ability to grant any wish the user so desires. This war contains a mix of characters, all with their own motivations. From heroic idols in the past, fucking high school students and hired guns and master assassins, right? The story and setting was amazing and the execution was nearly flawless. For an anime of that time, I think Fate Zero came out in 2009. The only issue I could have with it is that it's a bit predictable in some aspects, but it's a prequel, so that should have been expected. It's already working to a defined ending for the sake of continuity, so really calling something predictable when it's clearly a prequel isn't much of a criticism, but the story is pretty good regardless of all of that. And the setting of the Fugushi city with the wizards and the high school, it was serviceable for what it is. Most anime happens in high school. Now for the characters. As I previously mentioned, there are 7 mystical servants and their varying masters with a slew of supporting characters to help flesh and round it out. I won't be able to go through everyone, just think about it, that would be 14 main characters technically speaking. The first character we're going to look at is Sugu Emiya. He's the closest thing we have to a protagonist. Remember, this is a battle royale show, or a protagonist isn't really a protagonist, is more of a point of view character, but for the sake of argument we're going to call him the protagonist. He used to be a slayer of Magi. In case you don't know what it is, Magi is basically the term used for wizards in the Fate Zero universe. Even gaining the name Magus Killer. So why would a guy like Emiya, who kills mages for a living, put himself in a thing such as the Grail War? Simply put, he wants to end all conflict, which is expected of any protagonist. Think about it, every protagonist wants to end all conflict within their current scope or expanse. They all want everybody to be friends. I'm not saying that Emiya wants people to be like friends, but he has a set goal that he's working towards, right? The thing that makes this kinda different though is his morals. He's not goody-goody or kind in the normal sense of other protags. He's cold, ruthless, believes the ends always justifies the means. That's probably the best way to sum up this guy's character. The ends always justify the means. To put this in context, if he has to save 200 people, he will kill 100. That's how he looks at it. This is Sugu Emiya in a ball. I know that this seems as the wrong classification, protag for Emiya, but he is. The second character right now is our lady and beloved queen, Arthuria Pendragon, otherwise known as Saber. It's fucking Saber. I shouldn't have to break down who Saber is. If you're watching anime, you should know who Saber is by now. I really do like her. Everybody fucking loves Saber, but she doesn't act like how a king should. I mean, being the gender swap connotation representation of King Arthur, I mean, I do have a level of expectation for how a king should act, and I wasn't really pleased by that. Yes, she has a strong moral compass in stark contrast to Emiya, and she's as courteous and well-mannered as any king from the Arthur legends, but that's the only kingly thing about her. She is somewhat indecisive and is often contradicted by her emotions about who or when to kill. A battle royal show, or protagonist for a lack of a better term, is conflicted about attacking. I just find that weird at times. If anything, she's more like a princess who just got the throne rather than the king of Britain.
You seek the Grail merely for your own benefit, and as such, you could never understand that. You, who became a ruler, only to satisfy your endless greed.
A king without greed is even worse than a figurehead! Saber, you said you would martyr yourself for your ideals. In life, you must have been something akin to the purest of all the saints. A proud and noble figure, at the very least. But who can truly admire the rough and thorny path that a martyr must follow in life? Who actually dreams of such an ending? A king must be greedier than any other. He must laugh more loudly, and rage for much longer, and embody the very extreme of all things, good and evil. That is why his retainers envy his very existence, and adore him as well, and why the flames of aspiration, to be just as the king is, can burn within his people.
Kerei Kotamaine, my favorite character.
But he ain't no ordinary priest. Literally, take the Scottish, Celtic, Irish, I don't know, I'm not versed in vexillology or whatever the hell they call this. Take that Scottish priest guy from Helsing, times it by 1,000,000,000, then add fucking Crispin Freeman with a full suit of black, and you will have a rough equivalent to Kerei Kotamaine. And that's about it for characters, story and setting. Let's talk about the plot of this show. Now on a basic level of plots, there is not much wrong. The plot is big, complex, filled with a lot of twists, and I'm glad it's that way, because if it weren't, it would be completely crowded with the vast amount of characters except for 2 issues. The first one seems to be some romantic subplot between Sugu and a side character. I would confirm it, but you've seen them kiss in the first 3 episodes and nothing happens after that. I found that extremely annoying. I think she's the assassin side character. I don't even remember her name. When this anime started, our main protag, remember the guy that we're calling our protag for the sake of this review, Sugu Emiya. It was like a squad of 3, so it was him, the servant Saber, and this side character assassin girl that I assumed would be some romantic interest, but never went anywhere. Sure, Fate Zero isn't a romance anime. That little twist, if they decided to go on with it, could have helped a bit when the anime reached some darker spots in its plot. Not saying that we should add levity to Fate Zero. Fate Zero is a dark story at times, and I wouldn't want to misconstrue the feelings or the emotions that the original creators were trying to get across. But still, you know, if you're gonna have this subplot of the assassin having a girlfriend that goes out on assassin missions with him, or is like his butler or something, you know, it would be nice if you would just not leave that plot thread hanging. To make it worse is the characters and how they pretend like nothing has happened. Maybe that little plot thread got copied from the game or the visual novel, but I just found it annoying and inexcusable actually. And this is our main character having an affair. What the fuck? Because literally, bro, Einstein is like Emiya's lover in this show. He's like an assassin, so when he goes out on assassin missions, he hooks up with his partner that rarely gets mentioned. We only seen them kiss like twice on screen. I know I'm fucking expounding on this point, but I was really invested into the character of this guy, and I didn't get why he was trying to cheat on his wife, but you know, that's for another time. Now the second issue with this plot is the aforementioned ending. Yeah, fucking segue that was really long. It's anticlimactic. It just is. Now we do know that Fate Zero is a prequel to Fate Stay Night, as I said before, and as such, they must be cohesive. Zero must end a certain way so that Stay Night can begin the way it starts without contradicting itself. And considering that the prequel was made a couple years after Fate Stay Night, you know, that could have been an issue. So I get that, but still, and a big but, Fate Zero is an adaptation, and such, it must be able to stand on its own. You know, this is a rule that a lot of people like to look over when viewing certain media. You cannot use the fact that something happens in the manga or in the book to judge the quality of something that happens in the anime or the live TV series or mini series based on a novella. You know, adaptations should be able to stand on themselves. You shouldn't watch a movie, you shouldn't watch an anime and have homework after. You shouldn't be watching something that has 12 episodes and you're still trying to piece together what happened by skipping through pieces of the fucking light novel or checking some obscure OVA. Fate Zero kinda messed up in this way. The plot almost ended in satisfaction, but it started to unravel and left itself by accomplishing nothing apart from setting up Fate Stay Night. And while I said it's a prequel, it's not wrong for setting up Fate Stay Night. The fact that Fate Zero is 10 times better than Fate Stay Night could have ever been, disregarding the time skip in between all of this shit. The fact that it's 10 fucking times better than what Fate Stay Night could have ever been, and we're literally forced to watch this like 10 out of 10 anime just go to shit in the last 2 episodes because it wants to keep up in line with Fate Stay Night, and it's all about this big incident that happens where spoilers have been throughout all this shit already, but basically spoilers. Emiya opens up the Grail, he contradicts it in a way, and for some reason the Grail just decides to transport hell to the middle of the fucking city and people start dying. Emiya saves somebody named Shiro, and that's how you get your protagonist for Fate Stay Night. 10 years from now, canonically. That's such a hard word to fucking pronounce. Could not people invent a better word for timeline-wise? So, timeline-wise, that's how you end up with your protagonist for Fate Stay Night. Now that we have all the heavy shit out the way, let's talk about the animation. Now, this is one of the best series, animation-wise, I have ever watched. The most consistent ever. It is Ufotable, and looking back, I've never watched much Ufotable shows, not mentioning like Demon Slayer or the Mugen Train movie here, because I think the whole world has watched those already and they were pretty good. But looking back at it now, I think Fate Zero is probably underrated. If Fate Zero came out right now, it would have like 10 times the Demon Slayer hype. Animation wise, this show just did not fail. From the character designs to visual effects, it was fucking fantastic. The only thing I wish about this show that it could have been like a 50 episode show. And I'm not saying that as like stretch this show out or anything, but all the servants are interested and well written. There's plenty of space for violence and action and animation based on how the power system works in this, because the servants are able to manifest based on how their masters manipulate mana. So it's not like the servants take permanent damage unless it's a special case. For example, Lancer cutting off Saber's tendons in her arms, or whatever the hell you call that piece between your wrists that allows for movement. Permanent damage doesn't really happen in the show all that often. So they could have like doubled the series, focused a bit more on the action, just gave the fans more, but I understand. They eventually did that with Unlimited Blade Works 2. Right, because you had Unlimited Blade Works, then you had Unlimited Blade Works 2. Sound-wise, the soundtrack is forgettable for me. Apart from the first opening, which is Oath signed by Lisa, and Lisa is basically Japanese Beyonce, so that's not surprising at all. Which was at the time my new favorite opening. What's my new favorite opening now? I'm gonna say Jujutsu Kaisen, the second one, Vivid Vice. Back, Oath Sign was the shit with the piano and the organs and blah blah blah. So if we're talking about song, probably the most important element of this conversation is not the opening, is not the soundtrack, but are you gonna watch dub? Now if you're going to watch this, it has to be dub. Why? A lot of the characters are not Japanese. Now I don't know about other people, but if I'm watching an anime that isn't Japanese, I can watch it in sub, no issue. But with a show like Fate Zero, where you're having like, so if you're watching a series like Fate Zero, where you literally have King Arthur, right, King of England, it would be nice if he had an English accent. So this show has a lot of characters, right? 7 servants, 7 masters, supporting characters, and all the servants are based on historical figures. So we got Alexander the Great. I think he's from Greek or Alexandria, or did Alexandria came after Alexander the Great? You got Gilgamesh. I've done so well up until now to not mention Gilgamesh in this fucking video, but I just didn't want to drop his name. Who's like the king of Babylon. You've got Castor, who's some weird gypsy dude, I don't know where he's from. You know, you got a lot of characters here, and they're all interacting in different ways. If you're gonna watch this in sub, Japanese audio with subtitles, you're not gonna get the full impact of this story. The dub increases the level of this story immensely. Immensely. I mean, the only character I can say that probably sounds better in Japanese audio than with dub is Berserker, and that's because Berserker is like screaming and shouting and angry and very much out to destroy the whole world. Maybe the English voice actors just didn't want to catch that Broly energy. Hercules is probably the best Japanese dubbed voice, and he ain't of much relevance like after halfway through the show. So now I know before I went into all of that about the dub and Saber and Hercules and Alexander the Great, the only issue I have with the dub is Saber. I mean, I know it's not a British person doing the voice acting for her, it's an American person. My brain wasn't able to like just get that fact out of my mind that this is an American person doing a British accent pretending to be royalty. They could have just gotten a British actor, man. They could have. It's Fate Zero. Plenty of people know about this show. They would have wanted to work on it. I don't see the sense of having like somebody that performs so poorly, the protagonist as we're calling her, main accent like so badly. It was just boring and lackluster. I'm not saying that they should ham it up and like make her oh Poppy oh, but and weirdly enough her dialogue to King Arthurian or some like she sounds like a contemporary modern day woman with like strong sensible moralities. And come to think of it, that's something that I've never really thought about this show. Like the main female characters of this show, they don't have properly written dialogue. All of their dialogues is like kind of the same. Jeez, am I really second guessing this? Either way, I think the standout dub voice was fucking Kotamaine. I mean, that is my favorite character within this show, so that shouldn't come as a surprise. Final verdict and rating. Fate Zero is good, and sure, it fails by the end somewhat. Saber is not British or is British. I don't guess. Sometimes I'm really wondering if this is a British king or like an American woman talking. But everything else, it got a 10 in. The plot, big hole with the plot has a major hole in it with the romance going on and a lack of main standout characters, because apart from the three that I've mentioned, I mean everybody else is just like way of fulfilling what the show needs to be done. Yeah, everybody else in the show is a plot device. They're not really characters apart from like the main group that I've named. And after putting in all that work to build up Sugu Emiya, this is what they do. They literally implode the ending of this show. I've already spoke about the ending once. I'm not gonna go over it again. But like Emiya is such a great character, and what they did with the ending of this show absolutely killed him in my sense, right? It literally left me there with my brain imploding on itself for hours on end. But what are you gonna do, man? It's fucking anime. I hated it, loved it for what it was, but I gotta give it like 8.9 out of 10. That's it. That's the rating. I'm just a guy screaming into the internet.